What's up, all my OGs? This is Yona G, and welcome back to Yona's Universe. Today's episode is going to be about forgiveness. I know, sticky subject. Forgiveness has not been easy for me over the years. It has not been an easy journey. I feel that in the spiritual community, especially among my spiritual girlies, shout out to you. It seems to be centered around this, oh, you just have to let it go. You just have to let the past go. You just gotta let the past be the past. And it kind of negates that there is a whole process that leads up to being able to forgive someone if you're willing to forgive someone. Now, you don't have to forgive anyone. You really don't. But I think that your spirit and your sense of peace it's a little lighter once you do forgive a person. Do I think forgiveness is necessary? Yes. In order to move along this journey and not be holding on to so much baggage. I think forgiveness is absolutely necessary. But it is a decision at the end of the day. You don't have to forgive anyone or everyone, but I think that it's worth it. But I wanted to touch on the fact that a lot of the times everyone's like, oh, just let it go, be the bigger person, da 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 da. But it's not that easy. And maybe it is, like, maybe there's like a moment, like when your body, soul, and spirit is ready to forgive somebody, it just clicks in, happens like that, and you're done, right? But to the people that are actively practicing forgiveness, it's not that easy, right? Not only do you have to acknowledge that you felt that you were done wrong. First of all, that's the first step. You have to acknowledge that you felt that you were done wrong by someone. And whether you were or weren't, that really doesn't matter because you feel how you feel and your feelings are valid. So first you have to acknowledge that you felt betrayed by someone or you felt done wrong by someone. And a lot of times I know, especially in my journey, I was one of those people where if I felt it, because I process things a little slower than most. So if I felt the type of way, I wouldn't feel the type of way in that moment. I would just be like, okay, whatever. Like it would kind of feel the type of way, but it wouldn't be anything strong, right? And then like as the week goes on, I'm getting more and more upset, more and more resentful because I'm just like, oh, like that person really tried to play with me, or like, I must be a B word or something because like they really tried to play with me with whatever situation it was. But since I didn't have that realization until a week later, I felt weird bringing it back up to whoever did whatever to me, right? Because I'm just like, it's a week later. I didn't acknowledge it in the moment. So why even bring it back up? Like it doesn't seem progressive. It doesn't seem rational. Because this other person been living their life for a whole week or whatever, not even thinking about what you was going through because they don't know. Or they do know and they just choosing not to acknowledge it. But that's another topic. But yeah, so like, I would process pretty slow. I would come to the conclusion a week later. I wouldn't say anything, but I would always feel, oh, like that was weird. Like that person was doing da 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 or whatever. But I would just be like, okay, cool, it's light work, whatever. And then I wouldn't even acknowledge it. I would just be like, it is what it is. It happened. Whether they meant it or not, doesn't matter because it already happened. I can't trust it anymore. So then I would just go through life. But I noticed like anytime somebody would do something, it would just build up and build up and build up. And then I would just be having like these explosive episodes where I'm like, no, F this, F that, F you. Like, you got me effed up. Or not even got me effed up, for real. My thing was, I just cut a person off. There were some times where I would snap on somebody, but most of the time I just wouldn't say anything and I would cut the person off. So it took me a while to be able to even acknowledge, okay, I feel done wrong by this person. I feel betrayed by this person. You know, I feel whatever. And then just acknowledging it within myself. That was a lot. And then you have to choose whether you're going to bring it to the person's attention. Now, forgiveness, you know, the old cliche, it's never about the other person. It's always about you. Forgiveness is for you. And I do subscribe to that. I do believe that. I also believe that if you're in a relationship with someone, whatever the relationship looks like, friendship, romantic partner, whatever it looks like, if you guys are going to continue a relationship and attempt to continue a healthy relationship, then these things should be spoken about. Even if it's a week later. Even if it's a week later. So then you bring it up to the person, right? And that could go a lot of different ways. They could deny it. I was used to people denying it. I was used to people trying to like flip it and make it seem like I was crazy, which is fine. But I'm also used to people acknowledging like, okay, you know, I did do that. I apologize for doing that. And for me, that tends to make the process a lot easier because at least they're acknowledging that they did something. Because I'm used to people just like acting like nothing happened. I'm like, no, this thing happened. Like, I'm not crazy. This thing happened. So you get past that, whether you bring it up to them or not. That's a whole another thing. But then you get to the place where you might still be holding on to something. Whether they've apologized or not, whether you've brought it up or not. You get to this place where maybe you want to let it go, but you can't. Like maybe you want to be like, I'm not even worried about this. I don't feel anything about it, but it's just something inside of you. It's just still holding on to what happened. It's holding on to the betrayal. It's holding on to the pain of it. And in those moments, that's, for me, that was the most part where I'm just like, I just want to let this go. How do I let this go? I just want to let this go. And what I learned for myself was, and just along, I'm a spiritual person, so just along my spiritual journey, what I learned for myself was the moment that you continue to bring up, oh, this is what I want to let go of. I want to let go of this. I want to let go of the circumstance. I want to let go of this moment, whatever it is. The moment that you try to let go, it's like you're holding on to it. It's weird because it sounds backwards, but the minute you try to like put effort into letting go, spiritually, like the real focus is on the situation. So you could be like, oh, I want to let go, but it's like, let go of what? And then it's like, oh, this situation. So the focus is truly on that situation. So it makes it almost impossible to let go of the situation or let go of the pain. So what I've noticed is, instead of trying to tell myself, you need to let go, how do I let go? Because it's, you know, it's a continuous cycle. You're like, oh, I'm hurt, how do I let go? Okay, I let go, but you didn't really let go because you're really just focused on the issue. So what I started doing, what I learned actually helped, was basically starting from the root, starting from the base. Okay, this is what this person did. It made me feel this way. And instead of, I'm also a person that intellectualizes my emotions a lot of the time, or it was a habit that I had and am still working on. So I could talk all day, every day about, oh, this made me feel this way, and that's because of this in childhood, and that's because this person used to do that to me. But that's intellectualizing your emotions. You have to really sit and say, okay, that made me feel what? And then that emotion will come up. So it's, oh, I felt betrayed. And then you just have to sit inside the emotion. Feel the emotion. Feel what betrayal feels like. Feel where it's affecting your body, whether it's like tightening your heart or it's like like it's in your gut and it's like wrenching your gut. Just feel. Sometimes I feel emotions in my back. Like you really just have to sit in that emotion and try to remind yourself that it's okay. That emotion is welcome and it's okay and it's acknowledged. Because a lot of the times our emotions will come up and we'll need to cry or we'll feel rage or anger or depression, and it's uncomfortable. And we don't want to feel emotions that are uncomfortable because they suck. But you just gotta feel the emotion that's uncomfortable, because the minute the emotion feels like, okay, seen, the moment the emotion feels seen and acknowledged, it'll process through your body and you won't even feel it anymore. You can bring up the situation and you won't feel anything. Now, if you bring up the situation and you still feel a way about it, you haven't processed it. You haven't processed it and you haven't forgiven the person, or forgiven the situation, or forgiving yourself for tolerating the situation. If you still feel a way about it, you haven't forgiven. There are many situations in my life that I'm still working on processing it. And every time I think I'm done processing it and I have a good cry and a good release, and I'm like, oh my God, like I feel so much lighter, I feel so much better, something will trigger that situation. And I'm like, damn, I thought I was over this. I thought I was done. I thought I had processed this. But you kind of just gotta let your body be. You gotta let your emotions be. Like, you can't judge your emotions the minute that you're like, oh, I thought I already dealt with this. That's like making your inner self be like, well, aren't I worth dealing with? Like, aren't I worth processing that emotion? Aren't I worth seeing? Like, aren't I worth seeing? And you, like, obviously it's an internal relationship, but you really have to cultivate the relationship with yourself, because yourself really just wants to be seen. Yourself just really wants to be heard. That's it. And it sounds really easy and it sounds really simple, but I promise you, it's not. It's really not. Because we look at the outside world and, not everyone is like this, but a lot of the time we're like, oh, you're not going to get over on me. You're not going to play with me. Not I. And it's like, that person genuinely is not even playing with you. It could be anybody else in the world in your role in their life, and they're going to treat them exactly the same. So it's not personal. It feels personal because it's like, you was wildin'. But truly it's not personal, because everyone is just operating from their internal world. We don't know what their internal context is. We don't know what their internal dialogue is. Everyone is simply just operating from their internal self. And again, if it was anybody else in your position, in your role, in their life, they would treat them exactly the same. So in order to forgive someone, you have to let yourself process that emotion. Because if you don't, your body's just going to hold on to it. That's how you get more stress. That's how you get diseases. That's how you get more pain. When you have cramps and like your hip locks up, or like your back is consistently hurting, you have chronic pain somewhere, that's because your body is holding on to a certain type of stress, and it's holding on to a certain type of unseen emotion. You'll notice along your journey, the more you process your emotions, the suppressed emotions, and the emotions that come up from everyday situations, the more that you start to process them, if you also cultivate a relationship with your body, you'll start to realize that your body isn't in as much pain. Your body isn't as stiff. Like, you'll feel it. You'll notice the difference, because you'll go from like chronic pain in your hip or chronic pain in your back to just this lightness. Like, it doesn't feel so stiff. You can move around. You can move your neck around. So forgiveness can be very difficult because we want to just let it go and act like it doesn't matter and act like we don't feel anything. It is what it is, or even acknowledge it. But we have to acknowledge that we're feeling pain. We have to acknowledge that we feel hurt. We have to acknowledge that, we didn't like certain experiences, or certain experiences were traumatic for us. Because if we don't acknowledge that, we can never forgive. I also want to talk about forgiveness of self. That was a really big one for me because I've struggled with like victim mentality, and not in a sense of like making things up. I feel like a lot of times people think victim mentality is the person is just making things up, like, oh, or putting themselves in the victim role. And it's like, these outside things can happen a lot to one person or the same person. And they are on the receiving end of a lot of trauma or a lot of traumatic situations. And in the same instance, when they're taking on like the victim mentality, it's like, oh, they just have this thought process that shit keeps happening to them. And it doesn't mean that it's not true. It can be true. And also, I feel that how we feel, how we think, how we process attracts our reality too. So if we continuously tell ourselves, oh, shit keeps happening to me, this keeps happening to me, that keeps happening to me, then it's going to continue to happen to you. The universe doesn't know no as an answer. I was told that by a very wise man a few years ago. The universe does not know no as an answer. If you ask for something, if you declare something, the universe is going to say, yes, that's true. Here you go. So, and I also understand that the more that you've been subject to a type of treatment, the more you're going to think, because it's kind of ingraining it in like the neural pathways in your brain, and you have to find a way to reprogram your brain and give yourself a different narrative, because your brain is just running off of the narrative. So a lot of times we want to be like, oh, all these things happen to me, and that can be true. And also we have to ask ourselves why we continuously attract the same thing, or continuously attract a traumatic event, or why we continuously attract the same person, or why we continuously attract people that treat us terribly, horribly, and then why we choose to continue to deal with it. And I know a lot of the times, especially in relationships, it's like, oh, we're just trying to get back to that moment where everything was peachy, everything was great. And it's hard to let go of that. It's hard to say, okay, that happened, and also all of these other things happened. Now, I'm not speaking to anyone that's in a marriage or a relationship and you guys like went through, y'all was rocky and y'all trying to make it work and y'all are putting the work in to recover. I'm not talking about that, because that's between them. And if y'all are making active decisions to work on whatever trauma y'all both have, then that's great. But allowing ourselves to ask the question, why am I continuously tolerating this type of behavior that I don't benefit from, that makes me feel low or little or demeaned? Why am I trying to convince the same person to treat me better? Why? That's part of the forgiveness journey too, because then you have to acknowledge that you are allowing certain things into your reality. Not only that, you have to forgive yourself for continuously allowing those things into your reality. It's crazy. When I found that out, I was like, that's okay. All right, don't come for me. You don't have to come for me. You don't have to come for me. But when I found that out, I was like, it makes sense, because I'm the creator of my reality. And, there are a lot of things outside of my control, but who I choose to be around, That's absolutely inside of my control. The job that I choose to work at, because y'all don't never talk about relationships with people at your job, and I don't mean like you going home with your coworker. I really mean like the co-worker relationship, the relationship between you and your boss, the relationship between you and your manager, the relationship between you and the atmosphere of your job. It's real. So why do we continually choose to put ourselves in any environment that doesn't serve us, that we already know what to expect from that? We know if that environment is toxic. We know if that environment, and don't get me wrong, some of us don't know. Some of us don't know because that's what we're used to. We're used to dysfunction. We grew up with dysfunction. So it's harder for us to identify dysfunction. So a lot of the times, that's why we choose to continue, because we don't know. But once you get that little inkling, like, I don't want to do this anymore, something's wrong, I don't want to be a part of this environment anymore, and we choose to stay, we have to ask ourselves, one, why did we choose to stay? And once we get to that place, we can then forgive ourselves for choosing to stay with people or in environments that no longer serve us, or that aren't good for our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health. So forgiveness is really big because, again, it's not for the other person. It's not, I will say, it's not just for the other person, because it can benefit the other person, but it mainly benefits you because it affects how you feel. It affects how you navigate life. And also in being able to hold yourself accountable for the things that you can control in your life. And then forgiving yourself for the things that you've done to yourself, or for the things that you've let other people do to you. It deepens your relationship with yourself. And a lot of the times, especially in the spiritual community, we think, oh, I learned this new skill, I learned this new tool to handle things, and so now it's done, now it's over, and I never have to worry about it ever again. And it's like, ha ha ha, no, that's incorrect. Like, now that you have that tool, now that you have that new skill, you will literally use it for the rest of your life. And granted, it'll adapt, the tool will adapt, the way that you approach will adapt, obviously, according to whatever situation that you're in. But it's not like a one and done. It's not like, oh, I forgave my parents for doing this thing, and so now I'm good. It's like, no, that wound is probably going to show up a little more in your life, and you're going to have to figure out how to process it, and what worked before that's not working now, and how you can move into a space where something else might work better now. Or, oh, I forgave that friend, so I'm good now, and then the next friend starts doing the same thing, or a new friend starts doing the same thing. Or they might not even be doing it. You might just be triggered because of the trauma that you had with a friendship, or with a parent, or inside of a relationship. It's crazy. This spiritual stuff, it ain't for the weak of heart. It really isn't. And granted, it's for everybody, because we're all spirits. We're all spirits in the human body. But, some people is a little more mindful than others, and that's okay. But just know this shit ain't easy. It ain't easy. Forgiveness, it's not easy. as easy as we want it to be. And granted, if you can get to a calm space or a peaceful space, that makes it a little easier, because then you can understand, okay, this was the perspective of that person, and while I don't fuck with how they approached it, but I can understand where they were coming from. I understand the type of person that they are. And so that situation happened because of the type of person they are, because of the type of person I am. And then, I don't know, it's just, for me, it was really big to understand that I can forgive myself, that I can apologize to myself, and then forgive myself. Because apologizing to yourself, it changes the game. It changes the game. Like, say your name, Yona, I forgive you for, and then listing it out, you'll feel so much come out. You'll feel so much come out. Like things that you hadn't focused on in years, things that you didn't acknowledge for years will start to come up and come out. And then you in the bathroom in the mirror crying, or you in your room in the middle of the night crying, and you don't know why you're crying, and you're just like, I forgive you for this. Yeah, it's real. It's real. So, forgiveness is a superpower, I think. I really do, because it's not easy. And once you get to a clear, peaceful space where you can look at it, at the situation, I won't say objectively, but when you can look at it from a peaceful space and say, this person was coming from this place, I was coming from this place. No, I don't accept it. I don't accept that treatment, but I understand it, and I forgive that person for doing that. Now, just because you forgive someone does not mean that you are inviting them back into your space, that you're inviting them back into your mental space, your emotional space, your spiritual space. Just because you forgive someone does not mean that you don't have boundaries. I think that is a big piece of the puzzle too, because a lot of people like to say, oh, I forgive, but I don't forget. And it's like, I think that comes from a space of, oh, I'm never going to let that happen to me again. But you don't have to approach it from such a guarded space. You really don't. You don't have to approach it from such a guarded space, because you can just say, okay, I forgive this person. I don't want them back in my life. And also, these are the boundaries that I'm setting. I won't let another person treat me that way, but the place that you approach that from is important too. If you're on guard and you got all these walls up and you're like, this will never happen to me again, I'm never going to do, then it's like, it's more than likely going to happen again, or you're just going to shut everyone out in attempts to avoid that hurt and that pain. And if that's the case, then you haven't really forgiven that person. But if you genuinely forgive the person and you're like, okay, I see how they treated me, and I don't love that for me, and I don't want that for me. So going forward, when I set a boundary, it is important that that person honors the boundary. And if they can't honor the boundary, then they shouldn't be in my space. If they don't understand boundary, that's okay too. Not everyone is meant to understand all of your boundaries. But if a person cares about you, then they may want to know why the boundary is there, but also they'll respect the boundary without giving you attitude for setting it. And sometimes people can give you a little pushback about it because they're used to you operating a certain way, and now you are changing that normal for them. So they have to acclimate to a new normal. So you might get a little pushback, but I think you have to have a little discernment. Is the pushback because you're changing their normal when it comes to dealing with you and it's something that they'll adapt to? Or is the pushback because they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries and your lack of care for yourself, and they want to continue to benefit from that, and so they hate that you have this boundary now because they want to continue benefiting and you're not letting them. So I think discernment is important in there, because just because someone is a little taken aback by your boundary doesn't mean that they mean you ill. It could just be they have to acclimate to a new normal. But yeah, it's important to also, I'll say this, it is important to take the time to forgive other people, and the time to forgive yourself, and the time to process your emotions. Because a lot of the time, we're just ripping and running all of life. Going to work, coming home, going to party, coming home, going to work, coming home, sleeping. And then that's it. We don't have time to think about, oh, this traumatic situation happened. It's like, okay, I can't deal with that right now. I gotta go to work. Okay, I can't deal with that right now. I gotta deal with the kids. Okay, I can't deal with that right now. I gotta do whatever. And if you're going to have a peaceful life, then you have to take the time to take care of yourself. And part of taking care of yourself is emotional health, mental health, physical health. It's not just, oh, I got a fat butt, I look good. Or, oh, girl, I know how to beat my face, I look good. Like, no, you have to take care of your mental. You have to take care of your emotional. And forgiveness is a big part of that, because if you can't forgive, you end up just carrying all of your baggage with you all the time, which weighs you down. I know y'all heard Bag Lady by Erykah Badu. She wasn't talking crazy. The woman makes sense. She knows what she's talking about. Listen to the song. Listen to the song, because she's speaking some real stuff. So forgiveness is incredibly important to live in this life. Incredibly important. And I hope that you all can take that and implement it in some way in your life to help you process any trauma or process any anxiety or depression. Because those things don't come from nowhere. You know, those things came over time because of real life issues that you went through. So I think if you can forgive yourself and forgive the person that may have inflicted harm on you, then you can set yourself free. Thank you for tuning in to my third episode entitled Forgiveness. I hope that I was able to help expand your consciousness just a little bit more. Tune in next time, and I hope to see you there.